Hello, and thank you everyone for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I'm super excited because we're going to talk about a lot of just Star Wars in general on this one, and so it's going to be great conversation. We'll get deep into certain stuff, but I'm going to start by going around and have you introduce yourself and let us know how you got into Star Wars, um, and also which is your favorite trilogy and why. So I'm going to start with Jacob.
So, Kevin, thank you so much for having me back on. I have been watching Star Wars since the first movie came out. I was a baby, so I don't remember that experience, but I do remember Empire when I was about 4. So, I've been just enjoying Star Wars forever. I never really got into the EU, but I've gotten a lot more into the lore in the last several years as Disney has added more to actual canon. I've been really excited to yeah, so that's how I got into Star Wars. And now I'm going to look at some of the EU stuff because my buddy Darth Chaco here and others have given me some great recommendations of some of those books. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, and also, so I'm actually going to change now that I have my notes up. I'm going to change the extra question, which is, who's your, actually it's kind of the same, your favorite Star Wars character and era. So yeah.
Ooh, uh, that's tough. I always struggle with even top 10 Star Wars characters, right? Because there's just so many. My favorite of all time, I'll weight it based on how long I've liked a character, Luke Skywalker. Just always been a huge Luke Skywalker fan. My favorite era, the ones that I know about, I think it's probably the time of the original trilogy, not just because of the nostalgia of the trilogy, but the idea of coming up through, going up out of the ashes of the empire and trying to build something up. I think that's pretty exciting. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And next is we have our my boy Darth Nuga here. So yeah, introduce yourself and how you got into Star Wars, favorite character and era.
Yeah, I'm Kyle. I honestly don't remember exactly how I got into Star Wars. It's just kind of always been there. The earliest memory I have was at a friend's birthday party when I was like 5 or 6. Their parents had rented Empire, and I was just completely enthralled by that. Um, in terms of character, definitely Darth Vader. He's
Mm.
just just his presence and how terrifying he can be. Like that scene in Rogue One is just it's
Mm.
legit terrifying in a certain perspective. An era would actually definitely have to be the original trilogy.
Okay, cool. I like it. And how about you, Nate?
Yeah, so my name's Nate or Nathan, either one, depending on what wherever you've seen me from. Either one's fine, but yeah. So honestly, probably I feel like it's a little repetitive, but the original trilogy for sure is probably my favorite. Maybe I'm biased because that was also where I was first introduced to Star Wars. But I kind of have a similar story. I mean, I can't remember a time when Star Wars wasn't around. So I'm a little younger, so I mean I didn't get to experience those original the original trilogy in theaters. I wish I did. When they were first released, but there's just so much good story, and obviously there's some gaffes and things that you kind of find out later on when they try to connect to all the other different trilogies. But favorite character is Luke. I mean, maybe again it's maybe some of that bias of just being an OG fan, but I enjoy all of them. I find different things enjoyable from each trilogy. So yeah.
Okay, nice. And then for myself, if everyone knows, I watched Empire Strikes Back over and over again on VHS tape. That was my first introduction. Um, the time period where I was growing up was when they first started doing the special editions, and so I got to see those
Mm.
get released in theaters, and then jump straight into the prequels. But the overall story and things from the prequels really captured me. So the prequels are my favorite era. Um, I will say that is it's funny though because when I rank the movies, um, by the rankings, you would think that the prequels would be last, but with added things like the Clone Wars, it's
Yeah.
really added a lot to the era. And then for me, favorite character, I'll go Obi-Wan, but I have a completely irrational love for Plo Koon that I cannot describe.
That's great.
Yeah, I just love Plo Koon. So you kind of want to, on this episode, we're going to get to talking about the state of the fandom and all this stuff, because it's always interesting to me, because I see it going in waves, and it feels like we're on a really positive wave right now, so I'm excited about that. But before we get there, I want us to kind of talk about Star Wars overall. So first, I'm going to go to Darth Nuga here, and let me know, what do you look for in a good story? Like, what makes something a good story?
I don't I don't know. I don't really know. I'm kind of easy when it comes to movies and things like that. Um, like I like action movies, things like that. So it doesn't really, I don't really have a lot that I need in a movie as long as it's just good. Um, trying to think. I'm sorry.
No, no,
No,
no,
I mean I
no
like
worries.
twists, things like that. That's one thing I love about the sequels. Is I personally like the Ray Pal or not Ray Palpatine, but that she was a Palpatine because you didn't see it coming
Yeah.
and then it happened. Like I like twists in movies and things like that.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you on that one, because I do get I make my wife mad all the time because she's watching something over there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen, and then this, and then this, and then that happens, and she gets mad. I'm like, sorry, it's not my fault. And so I do like having those twists and turns. How about you, Nate?
Yeah. I like, there's a variety of things, the themes that go along with movies and the character development from an individual, character standpoint, but then the journey of a group as a whole. That's a, common thing throughout Star Wars. It's not always one person by themselves. It's a group of friends going across the galaxy. Um, and diving into those themes, you have, Luke is always hyped on the idea of hope and the reminder for kids that to, no matter where the story goes, to always provide a message of hope wherever that leads. So different themes, different character development, things like that are things that I enjoy. And then obviously I love a movie that can provide, maybe, some sort of plot twist, but not necessarily a complete 180, but maybe just something I didn't expect. I always like to think if I could write it, then it's probably maybe not the best movie. So I like, having a director or someone in there that can create something I probably couldn't think of. So yeah.
Awesome, I like it. And then Jacob.
So there's a lot in these movies that I just really love. It's hard to pin it down to just one thing, but if I have to, it's probably going to be like a lot of the wisdom sayings. So George Lucas spent a lot of time really working like with Joseph Campbell and other people to try to, boil as much mythos from as much of human history and culture as he could into these, this really sort of discernible but just nugget, right, of something that everybody can relate to, because it's a little bit like everybody, what they grew up with, what they maybe their religion or something like that. So the wisdom sayings of the different Jedi as they're teaching, the do or do not, there is no try, all the way to Yoda's probably still one of my favorites because of, the greatest teacher failure is.
Right.
Like, it's one of the reasons I love him so much as a teacher. And there's a lot going on in these films. In terms of surprise, I've never really been surprised by movies over like the last, I want to say almost 2 decades. There have been very few movies that surprised me, including most of the Star Wars films until The Last Jedi. It blew me away. And I'm sure we'll get into things that we like about each of the trilogies, but it's why in the theater, my experience was just amazing, because there were like at least 2 times, if not 3 times, where I was just completely taken by surprise, which was so delightful because I'm not used to that. Like you were talking about, Brandon, with my kids, when I'm watching a film or a TV show, and especially if it's something we don't really care about, I'm like, hey, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And I nail it 99.9% of the time. Once in a while, I'll say, it could be these two things, and it'll be one of those things, right? So it's just fun. So yeah, good times with the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's for me. I mean, I love what you were saying, Nate. Too, what you said gives me Final Fantasy 15 vibes, where they're just cruising in a car with a bunch of dudes, and like that's what makes it so endearing. Is just that banter and getting to know all these characters, and having them fleshed out and feel real and unique. And to me, like that's the thing of a good story is if you are a good writer, then you've written each character's life essentially, right? They have their own goals, motivations. Everyone is a three-dimensional character doing their own thing, and we're watching them connect. And then being able to uncover that lore and that depth, like that's what I look for. And that's why a lot of times my favorite films of these trilogies are the middle installment, which are typically smaller. Like Empire Strikes Back is my favorite, but we start from this grand battle right off the front of it, and then we get to these small groups going on their separate missions, and then it gets smaller and then very intimate, and we're getting those details, and it ends with just Luke and Baylor, father, son. And it's like such a small but an intimate moment that it's just like,
Right.
whoo. So yeah, that's kind of my deal. Also, like you guys were saying, if it's too predictable, then I think I think it's not the greatest. But in those elements that you have these twists and turns, um, you need to make sure that when I rewatch it, I see the seeds of those in the film. That's really important
Right.
to me. Um, that's why one of my favorite movies is The Prestige. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but
Yeah.
definitely didn't predict it. But rewatching it, you're like, oh my god, really? Yeah. Anyways, we'll just jump into it. And I'm actually going to switch up the order here. I want us to do release order. So let's start with the original trilogy. And I want to say talk about, what was good about it, what was bad about it. Is there anything you would change? And then hopefully end with something else that's good. I want to do the compliment sandwich and keep this a positive discussion. And for that, I'll get a Nate first.
All right. Yeah. OG series. I mean, there's a lot that I like about it, just from the story, the introduction of these characters. At the time, it's like, what is Star Wars? At least if you watch it in that order. Um, but the trilogy as a whole, I mean, you kind of come into this era of the ultimate bad has already taken over, whereas it's not this up and coming. All right, you see a bad guy coming out of, we see them approaching through along a storyline, and then they try and take over or rise to the top. They're already at the top. So it's a little different perspective of the rebels at this time. They're already ruling the galaxy, and now the rebels are coming in to try and bring that back. But also, I just love it because the character development, the additions of like Lando and Yoda and these characters that we don't necessarily have in Star Wars and A New Hope. When it comes to things that are bad about it, I mean, for me personally, it's more about the things that you find later on, which is just like the
Mm-hmm.
petty stuff of terms of like, because they go and make the sequels and the prequels, then you come back and obviously you're going to look at it and be like, well, what was Obi-Wan talking about when he's like, well, from a certain point of view. It's like you can pick apart those things where if you're looking at everything as a whole, you're like, okay, well, there's certain things that don't really maybe don't make sense. But I kind of like that. I'm weird in that way, but I think those things are like, that's a part of Star Wars at this point. So I kind of like those things when I come across those, and
It's
those are,
character.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, for me, that just sums up Star Wars as a whole. Um, Things I'd change. Hmm. See, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I maybe wouldn't have Luke kiss Leia. But that's probably one for sure. So that's definitely one of those things you look back at and you're like, maybe not the best move, but you know, that wasn't necessarily the story potentially at the time. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I don't know if I would change anything. And maybe that's, I'm sure if I went and rewatched them all right now as I'm coming up with something, I might be able to pick some stuff out, but that's what introduced me to Star Wars, and I'm a huge fan of Star Wars now. So I don't think I'd maybe change anything, but overall, I mean, I already mentioned earlier, it's my favorite trilogy. So,
Yeah.
So, and then on a good note, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that. And then for anyone, if there's like, if you can't think of anything bad or anything you want to change, don't feel obligated to. But I mean, if there's anything that is popping out at you that, because I do have my gripes on all of them, but that's now that we have, like you said, all 9 movies plus Rogue One and Solo, there's some extra stuff to consider.
Yeah.
How about you? How about you, Kev?
So the original trilogy, yeah, it's so good. But growing up, I mean, I even understood that a lot of it was, I mean, it's space wizards and laser swords, right? So the physics don't make any sense. And when I see people online just bending over backwards trying to explain Star Wars physics, I'm like, you don't get it. That's not this kind of movie. It's not really what it's about at all. Yes, it's fun to theorize. And so in, the 80s and 90s, my friends would talk about how, well, how could there be, pew pew in the vacuum of space? How could we hear these sounds of explosions? And we theorized that for the Death Star, at least in A New Hope, that perhaps it's large enough that it had a small atmosphere. And anyway, with the so we went through this kind of exercise, but we didn't care. Like, never once did I think, you know what, I hate this movie because it doesn't make sense from a physics standpoint. It's science fiction. And so it's about the story elements. The earlier you learn that as a fan, that it's about the story and the emotion and the journey more than the science part of it, I think the better time you have with these movies, right? So in terms of good, it's just like I mentioned earlier about the way George Lucas tried to boil down so much that is essential to so much of humanity, maybe every person on the planet. I don't know. A lot of cultures kind of blended together to come up with the Jedi religion and some of the other elements. I just thought that was all fantastic, and the way it relates to so many people. As far as the bad, there's not really a lot bad. Yes, the twincest is kind of, suspect, but again, that was never the original intent. Like, there was a whole other character that was going to be Luke's twin sister, but I think the way they resolved it, how could they have known, right? Like, we'll just call it ignorance. Ignorance is bliss.
Right.
But that's kind of one of those campy things. It's like, oh, look, they're about to kiss. Ha ha ha. It's 4 times, by the way, if you wondered. There are 4 kisses between Luke and Leia in that trilogy. So not that I've counted. But there's not really anything I would change, except maybe, okay, there's a couple things that bothers me. When C-3PO and R2-D2 go into the little door and they lock it, and they're like, okay, it's locked, move on to the next one. I'm like, okay, come on, guys. That's right there. That could have stalled the whole movie, just like blowing up the empty escape pod, right? But then again, I don't care. Those are kind of like, haha, the stormtroopers are kind of dumb. Hey, the Empire's not that bright. So yeah, there's not a lot I would change. Probably nothing at this point.
Awesome. I love it. And how about you, Nuka?
The first question, what do we like about it? I mean, pretty much everything about the original trilogy. It's such a huge part of my childhood, so it's hard for me to be critical about it. Really, the only things I don't like were some of the decisions made in the special editions, especially the musical number in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, now that you
apparently a lot of people like it, but I'm not a fan of that.
Chicken
also, also, I mean, I've always kind of disliked the Ewoks, like the fact that they were able to help like 14 rebels take down the Imperial Army. But that's just petty things. And then like JK said, with the things that don't make sense, like them blowing up the pod and things like that. I feel a lot of it's been ruined by Family Guy because they brought out so many of the errors in the original trilogy, but in a fun way, that you never really thought of before. But overall, just everything about that, like I said, it's just was basically my entire childhood. Seeing when did the special editions come out? Like 96, 97?
Something like that, yeah.
97, 98, and 99, I believe, as they were getting ready to release the Phantom Menace.
Like, because I was born in 85, so being able to see those in theaters was probably one of the best things about my childhood, because I never got to experience that other than watching the VHSs over and over again. But I mean, it may not be my favorite trilogy, but it's one of my favorite things about Star Wars because of what it means to me from my childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Jedi Rocks is a little rough.
Apparently people really like it though. I made that video and people really slammed me for not liking that.
You're not a true fan.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will say, like you guys said, like, there is some wonky bits, but that is part of the charm, right? I mean, yes, I'm hyper aware that when they do the trench run, like why do these spaceships behave like planes with an atmosphere? And like, when I'm like, I want Newtonian physics, right? Shouldn't they? But
right.
that stuff like that doesn't matter. And it also, it's kind of funny because I answer a lot of questions on TikTok with these very small pedantic things. And a lot of people come to the conclusion that I think it's perfect. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's perfect. There's just an answer for the one thing you said. It's very different. As far as anything I could change, I do enjoy the reimagined Darth Vader Obi-Wan fight that you can see on YouTube.
That is amazing.
I will say I am not a huge fan of the camera work in that, but I would like that fight to be a little more action-packed. And beyond that, yeah, there were a few changes in the special editions that I wasn't a huge fan of, but I think overwhelmingly most of them were positive, especially in Empire, when you're able to see the scale of Cloud City and some of these other things. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in it with
Before we jump on to the next one, so you brought up something in the trench run that just reminds me. There is one thing I definitely would change. So when they're in there flying those X-Wings, when they're rocking like this, it's like, that's not how those things would behave. Imagine those S-foils, and I'm just like, okay, I get that somebody put them on a thing, and but that has bothered me since I was a baby. Like, that's not how that would work. But everything else, I've kind of blocked it out because I love Star Wars, but that's the one thing that bothers me. All right, carry on.
Also, why did he have to be named Porkins? It doesn't.
Yeah, man. Whoever did that, like,
that's just mean.
And you know, George Lucas did that on purpose. Like, he saw the actor and was like, Porkins.
That's when he was a lot slimmer, though.
Like,
so, just saying.
Like, I'm thinking of when George Lucas named the planet that Obi-Wan is from, because Jon Stewart asked him, and he's like, it's from planet Stew John. And you're like, okay, so master of mythology, but naming things is a little weak. Oh, so sorry, one last little point that helps me personally, based off what you said, Nuga, is when it comes to the Ewoks, I think of it more as them not being able to display, because like, if you're a little bear but you're that size, you are way stronger than any human. you know what I mean? Like, yes, the actors are little people in costumes, but like, if you are, imagine a bear that's smart enough to wield weapons and set traps, and they're all over this moon. Like, nope, not doing that. But that's how I reconcile it in my head, at least. But yeah, let's jump to the prequels. I mean, what do you guys the good, the bad, the ugly, and then the good again. And I started with I'll go to Nuka first.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the same with the prequels. I was, let's see, it came out in '99, so I would have been right at 14 when it came out. So again, it's just a huge part of my childhood. I never understood personally the hate, because I just viewed it as more Star Wars, which is good. Any Star Wars is good Star Wars for the most part. Um, the only negative thing I ever remember saying about the prequels was at the end of Revenge of the Sith. When I was walking out, I told my girlfriend at the time, well, that seemed kind of rushed at the end, and then I immediately went and got my Sith tattoo. So, but I mean, that's, like I said, I mean, that's the only thing I could really think that I've ever really said negative about the prequels. I mean, some of the acting, not the acting, but the writing for the most part, some of that, and a little bit too much diplomacy. But overall, they're probably my favorite trilogy, in terms of story, because I love Anakin's arc. I love everything about Obi-Wan in that, and it's just amazing overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. And how about you, Kevin?
So I have always liked those movies, and I was an adult when The Phantom Menace came out. Like, I just graduated college, I'd just gotten married like days before that movie was released. And I remember going to it thinking, hey, this is awesome, new Star Wars. And it didn't actually, I mean, there was nothing about it that made me cringe. Like, a lot of people hated Jar Jar or whatever. I just was like, oh, this is a new thing. Like, C-3PO was kind of cringy in the original trilogy. I'm like, oh, he's kind of like C-3PO. That was the takeaway I had. But a lot of people walked out of there with like rage over Jar Jar, which I've never understood. He served his purpose. He did it really well. There was, just new planets and new environments and new skills that we had never seen before, because this was the height of the, training and just the overall development of the Jedi Knights and the Masters and all that. So it was really cool to see the backstory for all the things that I didn't know I would ever get a backstory for. It was really, yeah, that's all I could say about it. Now, the weakest one to me, my personal least favorite of the entire saga, is Attack of the Clones. And people hear that and they think, oh, you hate this movie. So no, I don't hate the movie. I love the movie. It's just bottom of my list. My list happens to be very high above most everything else ever created by humankind. But it is, some of the dialogue is just painful for me to listen to. But that's kind of like those things we were talking about with the original trilogy, where it's why there's so many memes, because it's so awful, so much of it. But some of it's great. Like, Obi-Wan has all the best lines almost throughout the entire trilogy. And there's just, yeah. So I think that the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, I know we're not talking about that, and I won't give a lot away here for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But when Obi-Wan's like, trade disputes, and he's beating his head on the table, I just think, I love how Star Wars in that part of it doesn't take itself too seriously. I thought it was pretty great. What would I change about it? I think it was rushed, in the sense that there's no way George Lucas could have told, in my view, just me trying to imagine it all these years, told a full enough story of Darth Vader's rise and fall to put into 3 movies. Like, it just was too much. And that's why the Clone Wars is such an amazing series. And it was such an important, I think, hole filler in a lot of ways. And that's okay. The movies, I don't think are weak or anything overall. I just still think that it was just a lot of, they bit off more than they could chew in terms of story, but still, I think it works because it's Star Wars and it's that kind of movie. It's supposed to be a rip-roaring good time, as George has said many, many times. And I think he did that. And I walked out of Revenge of the Sith thinking, wow, this could have been really bad, but this wrapped it up really nicely. That was kind of my takeaway from it, even though it was kind of rushed. But then when I thought it was like the last 5 minutes of the movie, he turned to Vader. It's more than the last half. I didn't realize that. Once I've gone back and examined it, it's like, that's a big chunk of movie where he's already turned. So anyway, that's it. There's not a lot I would change. Just probably some of the Padme and Anakin scenes just make me cringe more than Luke and Leia kissing, by the way. It's just
Oh no, I second that. I second that for
so
sure.
my lady.
I like
Anytime you add my lady to the end of it and give that look, it's awful. So yeah,
Really?
that's
So you're saying I shouldn't say that and I should get rid of my fedora?
my
Gotcha.
lady. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, so there's not a lot I would change, but probably some of their dialogue I would tweak a bit. I would hire somebody to write that stuff. George, that wasn't a strong suit. It never was. That's okay.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think a lot of us will have the similar gripes. When he's like their banter in Revenge of the Sith, where he's like, "No, it's because I'm so in love with you," and like there's just a few weird, kind of like I said, wonky scenes. But
My wife and I have been married 23 years. We have never had a conversation like that. And it's not that we don't love each other, because we really do. That just makes me come up a little bit.
It's all good. And how about you? How about you, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you hit it, pretty spot on there. I agree with a lot of that. I'll start with some of the bad, I guess, so that we can end on some good things. I mean, overall, I love the prequels. I mean, I love Star Wars just as a whole, but I'm a big prequels fan. But if we're gonna start with some of the bad things, definitely the dialogue, some of the writing there, like you were just saying, a little cringy, especially Padme, Anakin. She's telling him to don't look at me like that, and then he just stares deeper into her soul. It's kind of a little cringy, but so definitely some things that little things like that could have been written differently, or maybe even directed a little differently in those scenes. But overall, things that I really love about the trilogy is, I mean, the era is one of my favorite like time periods. I know I said that the original trilogy era is my favorite trilogy, but the era of this, where you're getting all of the Jedi coming out, way more in-depth battle scenes. You get Maul, a great character. Just immediately you take one look at him, he's the villain. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, there's so many things like that I really enjoy about the directing, and some of the characters added there, and the backstory of Vader. I mean, you get Anakin's whole, the fall, the tragedy, and I do think it was a little rushed for sure. Even I mean, even I look back at it and I rewatch it, and I still try and give the benefit of the doubt sometimes, and I'm like, no, it's rushed. But like you said, I mean, that's why you get Clone Wars, and I feel like that's a big part of why they wanted to even do the show in general, because there's a whole lot there that wasn't told, and the whole Clone Wars era is great. So, but if we're sticking to just the prequels, definitely a little rushed with Anakin's fall. It seems pretty quick. And one thing I thought that could be changed. I don't know how it would, how would it affect things, but I always wondered why, when he's actually becoming Vader, he's getting the suit on, when he's like, where is Padme? And the Emperor's like, well, yeah. And the Emperor's, or he's like, is she safe? And the Emperor's, well, it seems you killed her. I thought it would be that was a great moment to blame it on Obi-Wan, to say Obi-Wan killed her, because then that, for me, that makes so much sense as to why Anakin would hate Obi-Wan so much and just not care about the Jedi, just completely disregard them and turn completely dark. I always wondered why, if it was on him, why he would still follow the Emperor. If he's like, well, what you told me led me to kill the person I love, so why would I continue following your teachings? So I thought that was maybe a missed opportunity. I don't know. I thought that could have been a good, to me, in my head, maybe it just makes a little more sense to blame that. That seems more of an Emperor move, to lie to him. But yeah, so that's just one thing I think could have been tweaked. It's not a huge thing, but overall, I love the prequels. I love the era, the lightsaber fighting we get, the different Force abilities we get. Even if we get Force speed for one scene or two scenes, it's it's still cool to see these things, them jumping and pretty much going Super Saiyan and Star Wars. So a lot of those things that I love, and it takes it to a whole nother level. Plus, I think you get Yoda at a good state. You kind of get more backstory of like, okay, the originals, you look back, he seems kind of loopy at times. He's a little old, but uh, the stuff in the prequels with him, and you kind of get to see him in his, maybe not his prime. He's still like 800 years old, but in his flipping around, he's still got his cane. But it's just kind of cool things like that to see. I do wish we got a little bit more Qui-Gon and Count Dooku interaction there. Maybe that's, I know some of that stuff is in the books, but that would have been cool to kind of see that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I love it. I love the prequels. They're all great.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat. Obviously, we have Jay Windu joined us in the chat with the I don't like sand quote, which is it's obvious.
Yes, master.
Obi-Wan would be very grumpy if he saw this. That's a personal favorite of mine. And in addition to that, like you said, there's parts of it that were rushed because there's a lot of story to explain not only the state of the Jedi and Anakin's fall, but how Obi-Wan got there, how Yoda got there, and all this stuff. And it's amazing how much that they were able to do successfully. And also, rewatching it, I have to give Hayden Christensen a lot of props because of his portrayal. Because although some of the dialogue was clunky, the notes of him turning to the dark side, you can see it physically in quite a bit of the film. But yeah, they were only able to do so much because of the time jumps, and if you only watch movies, Revenge of the Sith, when they're fighting, we didn't get to watch them interact with each other a whole ton. They referred to times when they've done things, but yeah, Attack of the Clones, we see them together for a moment and then go on separate missions. Of course, they fight together at the end, but that's still fairly short. Same thing with Revenge of the Sith. We don't see them together a lot, but the Clone Wars really amplified all of that. And like you said, Kevin, it really filled in those gaps. And also, I think it really irritates me because a lot of people use the term plot hole, and because something is not specifically stated doesn't make it a plot hole.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
Is that what it means?
Huge glaring errors or something that just was dropped for no reason, but they didn't do that. The whole Master Sifo Dyas thing bothered me for years until it was answered in the Clone Wars. So I was really glad, to learn more about that. But I didn't walk out thinking, oh, this is huge plot hole. That's probably the closest one I can think of off the cuff. But they're not. Yeah, just because it didn't go the way you wanted to doesn't make it a plot hole. And you said something about Hayden Christensen. Those actors got so much hate from some fans. It was always a minority of the fan group, but I never understood it. And it's kind of sad to watch because I know it took a toll on that guy. It certainly took a toll on Ahmed Best and some of these other actors. And Hayden did the best he could. Like you said, he physically acted it incredibly. Just the expressions. I mean, the dude could look creepy. He could look intimidating. He could look fun. He did all those things. I think he had a good range there. But
him screaming, "I hate you!" I feel that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was intense. That whole thing was really intense.
But yeah. I overall, like I said, it's my favorite era. I was ridiculed for that being my favorite for a long time, and it's nice to not have that happen. I still don't want to see other people face that same fate, but that's a whole side topic that we will get to. And actually, I do have to ask you guys, have any of you read the Matthew Stover Revenge of the Sith novelization? Has anyone?
I haven't, but I want to because I've heard a lot of you talk about it. So
if you enjoyed that movie at all, or even if you hated that movie, if you read that book, it takes whatever your enjoyment of that and times it by 3 to 5. That is not an exaggeration. Um, but all right, let's move on. So then we jump ahead to, as the prequels were a new Star Wars for the next generation, we move to the most recent Star Wars for the most recent generation. And yes, we can talk about the whole era, which includes the holiday special that just came out. Although, actually, no, I want to talk about that separately, and I can clip that part and make it a separate little short video as well. So, all right, sequels. The good, the bad. What would you change? And but let's leave it on a positive note. And I'm going to Kevin first.
So I love these movies. I love all of the Star Wars movies. While the era of the originals is my favorite era, probably because these movies are new and they're also amazing. Right now, they're my current favorite trilogy. And it doesn't mean that I think they're better than the originals or whatever. It's partly because it's new, because I've had the original trilogy for so long and I love it, but it was so great to have a new set of movies. And I think the story is incredibly well written in a lot of aspects. I think the journeys of the characters are amazing. I think a lot of people miss them. Uh, I I try really hard not to be condescending when I'll say what I'm about to say. I do think one of maybe for Star Wars, one of the weaknesses might be, particularly in The Last Jedi, that they didn't hold your hand as much as the other movies did. That it let you think. That's one of the reasons I love it so much. But I get that there are some things that just didn't make sense to a lot of people. And perhaps that maybe could have been a difference. I don't know. I don't personally want it to change a lot, but that's in terms of weakness. I just wanted to start there. I like the stories. I love that we finally had a female lead for the first time. It was, I think, 34 years it took to get one, from the first movie being released to that one. And then people will say, well, Jen Erso. I'm like, yeah, the year after Rey was introduced. Thank you very much. So that thing happened in the timeline. It's sooner, but it didn't happen in the actual Earth years. So the characters I thought were great. They could have, every character could be better. There's always ways we could look back and say, from our armchairs and say, this could be better. I think that the story, the Force Awakens was incredibly predictable to me, but I think it had to be. I think, I went into it with this nostalgia factor and I came out of it thinking, that's an okay movie. Like, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of stuff from the original trilogy and okay, so that's what they were going for. So it didn't bother me. I was not sure how it was going to go from there. I wasn't sure I was going to like the sequels until I got to The Last Jedi. And not only did I love that movie, but it totally ramped up what I thought of The Force Awakens because of the way I think that they set each other up, or The Force Awakens set that one up, and then that one sets up The Last Jedi. The Rise of Skywalker. I've got all this in my head. I just want to get it all out. But this isn't the Kevin show, so I'll shut up in a moment and let everybody else talk. I think that there are
I would watch the Kevin show, by the way.
Hey, I might start that just for you. I really feel like there are some very clear threads through the new trilogy that some people just seem not to see. Hopefully, we'll talk about the state of the fandom later. We'll just talk about my enjoyment. I liked that there was more than just a female protagonist. There were a lot of other new characters and even new aliens and new worlds. Again, every time there's a new world, I'm excited. A sand planet. But even in The Mandalorian, we keep going back to freaking Tatooine. So it's okay. Sand's a thing. Let's see what I would change. There's just not a lot I would change about it, honestly. The last movie there, The Rise of Skywalker, I probably would have tried to work Anakin in at some point in the trilogy. He couldn't just be added as a Force ghost in the last scene. I'm really glad we got his voice. I'm glad we got all the voices that we got. I might have added a couple if it were me, but I just thought that was amazing. But if they had planted the seeds of that and maybe had him show up at some point to Luke, in The Last Jedi, it would have made sense in the last one. But, in Carrie Fisher passing made a lot of choices really difficult for the third movie.
Yeah.
I think that all things considered, they did the absolute best that we could have hoped for. It's clear that people who love Star Wars made these movies, and that's why I tell everybody, go watch the documentary about, you know, the whole Skywalker saga. They talk about how much they love these films, and a lot of them were people who worked on the original trilogy or the prequels or all of them. You know, there are some people who carried over, like Lawrence Kasdan as a writer, from Empire to Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens. You know, there's a lot of things like that. So
like the scene where they added John Williams, and they specifically made pieces for every single movie that he scored in there. Like there was so much love in like these little tiny details. That's incredible.
It just, they love Star Wars, and it just gives me chills just thinking about it. Like, I'm literally, when you said that about John Williams, yes, all those little trinkets were amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. And how about you, Nate?
Yeah. Overall, I love it. I love that Disney had it. I love that they brought it back. I mean, more Star Wars, more Star Wars, more Star Wars. That's how I am. So I mean, I love the sequels, you know. I do think that in The Force Awakens, like you were kind of saying there, it's a little predictable. Which I understand. You're you're coming in to revamp Star Wars and bring it back, so you might play it a little safe. Which again is why I love Rian Johnson's take on The Last Jedi. I mean, nothing, you know, I didn't expect any of it. I mean, it was, so there's a lot of things. I mean, I'm a huge Last Jedi fan. For a lot of reasons. But
I didn't know that. I mean, obviously, welcome to the club.
Yeah. No, I love it. So, there's one of the things I do think was a missed opportunity was the big three, you know, Han, you know, you get Han, Leia, and Luke back together. Obviously with the way the story was, with Luke kind of taking the hermit, you know, story arc there, where he's kind of been in hiding there. I understand why that wouldn't fit if that's the direction you're going in, but that was something I think a lot of people maybe are will criticize the sequels for, because, you know, people hear they're all coming back and that's what they want to see. You know, they want to see them on screen together. So I understand some of the criticism there, but in terms of the effects on the storyline, I think the storyline that they had was great. I know there's tons of controversy with Luke's, you know, storyline. I love it. I actually think it makes way more sense. I could talk forever about it, but I think, you know, Star Wars has always been very poetic. They've always repeated a lot of themes, character arcs. There's a lot of things that you kind of can find repetitive patterns. So one thing I always compare, you see in the sequels, is you get Luke is a lot like Rey, and is a lot like what we've seen of Yoda. You know, they go on, Yoda says, I failed, went into hiding. Luke goes on, he finds something. I failed. What did I do? I'm going to do what my master did, because that's all I knew. I'm going to go into hiding. And then you get this full circle here in Rise of Skywalker, where Luke's now learning after Yoda comes back and reappears and tells him, you know, the greatest teacher failure is. So now he can pass that on to Rey before she makes the same mistake. So I feel like it's, the way it all fits together makes complete sense to me. I couldn't have thought of it before it happened, but after seeing it, like, to me, it made a lot of sense. Now, I also, you know, I like characters and heroes that have a little bit of a, you know, kryptonite and Achilles heel. So it's hard to say that I wanted to see Luke come out and just defeat everybody on his own, because if that were the case, the First Order wouldn't have taken over in the first place. I mean, they wouldn't have had power. They wouldn't have regained power, but we come into the sequels with them already back in power. So you have to make sense of how this is all fitting together. And so what was passed on from The Force Awakens to Rian Johnson, again, you guys mentioned the director and the Jedi. I love the behind the scenes stuff. You hear this and it makes so much sense about what was passed to him. He had to work with that stuff. And why was Luke not there when, you know, Han was in trouble? He would have felt that. He would have sensed that, because he'd done it before. We'd seen him. So the only explanation is that, you know, he cut himself off from the Force. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things from The Last Jedi that I like that then carry over, that made sense of The Force Awakens, but then carry over into The Rise of Skywalker. Like Rian Johnson introducing the, you know, the dyad, which we find out later on, but he kind of introduced it with their ability to see each other. And we see, water come through on Kylo's glove there. So we get these teasers that then allowed, JJ to just completely build off of. So there might be a lot of, I could see why people may maybe say, oh, well, there may not have been a direction. Like it seemed like each movie was kind of its own thing, but I feel like everything tied in really well. So overall, from a story standpoint, again, I could go on forever, so I'll try not to go on so long. But I think the story fits together perfectly. I do think the criticism I would have would I could see why people would be upset that we didn't get those big three back together. Rise of Skywalker, I loved it. I know people have issues with Rey's, taking on the persona of becoming a Skywalker, but I have no issue with it. It doesn't bother me at all. It makes sense. I mean, people do that in the real world. People will take on different last names. They'll, have different families. So, I mean, it makes sense to me. It fits. And to me, that becomes more relatable. I like a character that's relatable. So yeah, I mean, a lot of hype for that. I don't know if I'd change a whole lot, just a few minor things, but overall, huge fan of it.
Nice. Yeah, I actually made a TikTok on how the most popular name in the Black community is Washington. We're not all Washingtons by blood. A lot of us are Jeffersons by blood, but that's a different topic altogether. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you in the same boat. And walking out of The Last Jedi specifically, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, everyone's gonna love this film.
That's what I thought.
I was certain of it.
Yeah.
But how about you, Nuga? Your thoughts on the sequel trilogy?
I mean, I love the sequels. Movie wise, more than any of the other ones, because they're just incredible movies. I love being able to share Star Wars with my children finally, which is another big plus for me. These movies, like, because the original trilogy, I was a kid. The prequels, I was a teenager. These movies, I'm an adult, and these are the first movies in the series that actually got me emotional and made me care more than I ever have. Like when Han died, that hit.
I like that. I like that. That's good.
When Kylo couldn't shoot the bridge, that hit. The biggest thing probably is when Leia died and Chewie, though his reaction to that, that was just too much. And
they did it twice. There was like two separate.
Yeah, he watched Han die, and then But I mean, the only thing, there's not really much I would change. The casino scene, maybe it went on a little long. But
I can see that. Yeah.
I mean, even that goes back to the prequels, like the pod racing scene. I always think that goes on a little long, but it's only 4 minutes. It seems like more. But I would have liked to have seen more of Finn, especially more Poe. Well, I guess we have Resistance for Poe. I haven't really watched much of that. Some of that with my daughter, but it's not great.
Get through the first 6 episodes, you'll like it better. If you haven't done that.
Yeah. No, we're still pretty early. She's 4, so it's hard for her to focus on this stuff. And I don't understand a lot of the hate, especially towards Rose. Like, I never saw anything that she did wrong other than being a character in it and not getting enough screen time. Like, she saved Finn. She was in the escape pod scene. She was funny in that. I don't understand the hate that she got. I would like to have seen more of her, especially in The Rise of Skywalker. But a lot of the things that they did, it's just, I wish they would have had one director for all 3 of them. That was probably a mistake on their end, in my opinion, because they didn't have a cohesive story together, if that makes sense. Like, I would have liked Johnson to have directed all 3. Because the stuff that he did, especially the video that Jacob made about a week ago or so, with the hold on maneuver foreshadowed by Leia when she came back.
Yeah, when she goes through the hologram of
that absolutely blew my mind. And a lot of the hate it's getting is because of the internet's way more prevalent now than it was when the prequels came out. So I came out of Force Awakens loving the movie, and I saw a lot of the reviews, I saw a lot of the criticisms. I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And I didn't really start loving the prequel or sequels until I could watch them here on my own and just really analyze them. I was going to say one more thing, but I forgot.
Well, while you're thinking of it, I have one thing I've got to say here. Finn, I wanted to see Finn train. That was the big thing, and I couldn't think of it. I wanted to see him start his Jedi journey. He never even told Rey that he's Force sensitive. He's like, Rey, I never told you, and then that's kind of a why did they do that? But the holiday special, we'll talk about that another time. But I was so glad to actually see it, even though it's not canon. So anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of tough to learn that he was Force. I mean, we saw that he was Force sensitive in the movie by him feeling Rey die, but the fact that we learned it for sure through a tweet after the movie by John Boyega, I thought that should have been more obvious in the movies, I thought.
Yeah, I think that's a classic JJ move. If
overall,
you've seen him with Lost and stuff, he likes to leave things like tease it, but then leave it just like there.
Yeah, the smoke monster. Did they ever explain that? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But overall, movie wise and enjoyment, they're by far my favorite. Last Jedi is, in my opinion, a masterpiece in comparison. But that's not me saying like the Return of the Jedi is my least favorite Star Wars movie. But
how dare you, sir? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's still I don't dislike any of them. It's just it's hard to put in words like how I would like to rank them. But like Last Jedi is my favorite one of all of them.
Okay. Yeah, and it's my second favorite. And so I do agree. I do think like from a movie making standpoint, I have trouble not saying that these three are the most well made trilogy. I do have my qualms with Rise of Skywalker, with some bits, but yeah. So also, I agree with you, Kevin, that they did play it very safe with The Force Awakens, and that was intentional. It was actually interesting because I read Bob Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime, and he talks about like that decision and how they intentionally did it because they were hoping it would bring in more original fans, even though they knew this was going to be a new Star Wars for a new generation. And he expressed regret over how hurt George Lucas felt over them not going with his treatment that he wrote in 2012. And so it was interesting, but the movie did because so you can either have a crazy, very story driven, unique movie, or you can have a smaller character driven movie. You can't have both because it's too much for one movie. And so that's one thing I think it excelled at, actually, is because it was telling a familiar story in the background, we got to learn more about the characters in the foreground. I think the problem that came from that is a lot of people kind of made assumptions about the characters and then would get irritated when things didn't fall into their assumptions. But like if I compare A New Hope really was a simple, good versus evil tale, right? Luke is wearing all white, Vader is all black, and and then he's really tall and powerful, and he's really short. It's a David and Goliath at the same time. It's simple, right? The Force Awakens did what Empire Strikes Back did, because in Empire Strikes Back is the first time we saw a human element of Vader, and then after that we saw Vader kneeling before the Emperor, so we got to know he's not the guy in charge, he's not the most powerful. They did that in The Force Awakens. They specifically told us Kylo Ren is not the big bad, he's not the guy right now. And so anyone who's mad that Kylo Ren was not the next Vader, like that's the whole point, Sergeant. And so like stuff like that I think was really well done. I loved Ray's journey was so unique because it's finding her identity and her being lost, or her learning how to trust and become part of something. Um, she really had a perfect hero's journey, but all of her trials weren't physical, and so I think that that does confuse people. But if you're watching a movie of someone becoming a lawyer and it was a hero's journey, you wouldn't expect them to lose an arm or whatever. Like your setbacks are supposed to be related to your specific journey, and that's actually why when I walked out of Rise of Skywalker, I was disappointed. Um, I was disappointed, and I had to go back and kind of watch it. I watched it a second time, and then a bunch of stuff clicked, and then I talked to a friend, and then everything else fell into place. Um, if you're trying to find your identity, and by the time you are almost certain you have it, you find out that your family is the worst people in the galaxy. That's a great twist. You know what I mean? And then, of course, the end of the hero's journey is where they are in the same place they started, but they're different. She's on a desert. She has no one, right? All the Skywalkers are gone. Um, but she's no longer like, I'm going to wait for my life to start. She's living it. And like, it's so beautiful. Also, I love The Last Jedi. That's my second favorite Star Wars movie. Luke's story in that and the lore they touch on is just phenomenal in my opinion. um Imagine that juxtaposition that he had to face, where he looks into Ben's mind. This is the guy that saw good in Vader. He saw good in Darth Vader. He looks into Ben, and he doesn't see that same thing. In fact, what he sees, I mean, we hear the sounds of death and destruction and all this stuff, and he knows this kid is lost. Reflexively, he lights his lightsaber, doesn't attack, but then, when he wakes up, all these children that he took in to raise as Jedi are dead. Everything is dead. Everything his life has been towards creating is destroyed. And you have to ask, what is the Jedi thing to do? Should I have killed him? But that's my family. I can't kill him. Are the Jedi wrong? Or is this wrong? Like, that's a huge burden. I'd run too. Shoot. Like, all right. Well, I can't deal with this right now. I don't want to talk to Leia or Han. um, so yeah, there's stuff like that where it's so good. And then the performances, Luke's performance in The Last Jedi, I think, is the greatest performance of all Star Wars. And I think that Kylo Ren is a close second, but I also don't want to count out Daisy Ridley, how she is still very feminine but powerful, and she's doing these things, and like there's tears, and she's like going through them, and I don't know, it's just there's a lot of things that I really love. If I were to make some changes though, or some things I didn't like, so the Canto Bite sequence could have been shortened. And I wasn't a big fan of DJ's performance. It was unique. It wasn't my favorite thing. I will say I feel like the Canto Bite sequence, the way it looked and was shot, it felt like it came out of George Lucas's mind. That's how I imagine he thinks, like, personally. And if there was anything else I would change, I think they just needed more time with it. We needed 4 movies, not 3. Or in Rise of Skywalker, you could have gone to one less planet because there was too much hopping. But that's my big thing. Yeah, I guess I will. I'll end it with that, and we'll move forward. But you guys have any final thoughts on it?
I would like to add the beginning of Rise of Skywalker when he's on Mustafar trying to find I think it's Mustafar, right? Where he's trying to find the holocron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of the best scenes in the entire franchise, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like his arc is my favorite thing in that series.
Yeah.
I wish we would have got more Ben a little bit, but
I need Disney. If you see this, I need
you look
you
straight to the camera for that too.
I need you to make a canon novel that is the sequel trilogy, the entire trilogy, but told from Ben's perspective. I would love to be able to hear his thoughts on certain scenes. I would love for us to be like, to see him navigating his life through the First Order and being like, I'm very aware that these people are just using me. What am I going to do about it? How long do I play their game and all this stuff? Like that's what I would love that. And yes, as Bedazzler says, Claudia Gray should write it because
oh gosh, yes.
So you're asking about extra things we've thought of here. Rey is in The Force Awakens the same age, and The Last Jedi the same age as my oldest children are right now, my twin sons who are in college. When I
got chills when you said
sons, that. Like it's just like Tatooine. So when I saw her story, I saw a child. I mean, she's already an adult by many standards when we meet her, but I felt so bad for her. The horrible life she had. Like, I feel like to completely dismiss her takes a level of having no empathy whatsoever for any kind of character. Maybe that's just people's own development and where they are in their own heroes' journeys. But I wanted to go adopt her, and like, she could be a Parker, but I'm glad she's a Skywalker. I think there's so much about the Skywalker name. And I'll just finish up with the Skywalker name was a lot more than just her family, although that was a big part of it for her story. But it was also about justice for the Skywalkers, because if you look back with the lens of her being a Skywalker and that whole scene of Palpatine, tossing him, as so I fell, so falls the last Skywalker. And she's just witnessing, him just being completely awful to this family, and then realizing it's been for its entire, length of span for 3 generations now. He's just been just evil to the Skywalkers. For her to stand up and destroy the Emperor was partly about justice for the Skywalkers and carrying that name forward. But then the third one is, remember in The Last Jedi, the whole thing about Luke Skywalker coming back was so the legend can bring hope again. And her carrying on that name helps to bring hope to a galaxy that has gone through like 4 regime changes in just a few decades, right? Like, it's just gone through so much turmoil. And I think that there's just so much power in that name going forward. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah. And also I have Element 7 is here in the chat, and he was talking about the night that Luke went into Ben's tent, and what if it was kind of like what Obi-Wan said? It's as if a million voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. What if he sensed the future destruction of Hosnian Prime in that moment?
That's sort of implied that something on that scale, he sees that there's going to be so much terror.
Yeah.
And a lot of people dwell on the telling of Kylo in that scenario. And anytime you give an eyewitness account, it's going to be a bit biased because it's you telling it. And that's why I think Luke's second one, which is the third one we get, is probably the most honest of the 3, because he's finally he's hit rock bottom. Literally, he nearly hit the rock. And he's talking about, okay, here's what really happened. And people just focus in on that angry face of Luke in Kylo's interpretation, and he wasn't a boy. Okay. He was like 23, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
So a scared boy. And it's like, he was a kid. He's not a kid.
A kid having a bad dream.
Like, right. Exactly.
No,
so it's a bit more than that.
A man who was going to murder everyone and then did.
And if you read the comics, I know you shouldn't have to or whatever, and you don't, but I finally finished the Rise of Kylo Ren comics. And if you want to see a powerful Luke, it's a very short glimpse, but you get a pretty good glimpse of him. being very powerful, but also of what's going on in Kylo's head the entire time he's being trained. I won't give anything away, but I really liked it.
It's really good. Highly recommend Rise of Kylo Ren comic. There's also Age of Resistance Kylo Ren comic that also shows how powerful he is. I mean, we see him face off against a Zillo Beast. So I'll leave it at that. And then there's a Age of Resistance Snoke comic that also has a lot of awesome nuggets. But yeah, okay. So we got the sequel trilogy. We got through all the trilogies. Now we're gonna look at the same things, the same movies, but different perspective, right? So let's talk about what we've gotten from George Lucas. So I want us to start with the pre-Disney Star Wars and hear your guys' thoughts on that, and then afterwards we'll move into the Disney Star Wars, and obviously we'll include everything. But started with Kevin last time, so Nate, your thoughts on
All right.
pre-Disney Star Wars?
Yeah. So pre-Disney, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, big fan of every trilogy for different reasons. But when you're looking at pre-Disney, the Lucas era, it's very evident. I mean, if you know stuff, I mean, a lot of things about Lucas. He was very, he found purpose in trying to advance the technology that we've seen throughout the trilogies, throughout the movies that he had worked with. So from moving from the originals to the prequels, you could look back on it now and be like, oh, well, I'm growing up with the sequels, so it's, it's not the same. But at the time, those were huge advancements and led to not just Star Wars growing into what it is now, but movies, Hollywood in general, just the advancements that Star Wars has brought about as a whole because of Lucas and because of what he's done. I mean, you say what you want about some of his, whether it be directing or writing or something with the prequels. Overall, I mean, tremendously changed cinema for the rest of our lives. And so those are things that are outside of the Star Wars story that just continues to just bring me into just why I like Star Wars so much, because it's a lot more than just that. Like, I like the Director and the Jedi, like those type of backstories and like seeing the behind the scenes stuff are like, I'll go back and find YouTube clips of behind the scenes of them, practicing their lightsaber duels from the prequels. And so like, for me, I find enjoyment in those things too, outside of just the Star Wars story of canon, but like the actual creation of Star Wars and what it is. So seeing how that's impacted the world and cinema and movies and directing, and now what we get in Mando and the technology that we've seen in that with the volume, none of that, we wouldn't have any of that without, Roger battle droids. So, or Jar Jar Binks, the first, like live, like capture or motion cap, character. So these things that, you can criticize for, but in the end, there's so much good that came out of what Lucas brought to movies as a whole. I know that wasn't really based on like the story plot.
Oh no, this is
just
perfect, because I want to encapsulate all of it. So whatever comes to your mind. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So those are big reasons why I like the obviously the story, Star Wars, all of that, but it definitely, they are what, they grow, whatever the saying is, they grow beyond, they are what we, yeah. So they like, that's
True
what we're
burden of all
seeing.
masters.
Right. Yeah, there it is. There it is. So that's what we're seeing now with like the Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy, is because of what those advancements were brought with Lucas and what he was able to envision. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we might have lost Nuga, but that's okay. Your thoughts on it, on Kev? Also, so there's kind of a debate on what was the first blockbuster film, because there's really only two contenders, right? Jaws came out in 1975, and Star Wars 1977. And I mean, obviously, both of those movies changed the course of history. Like sequels weren't really a big
Right.
thing before this time period. So I'm curious, which one was the original blockbuster?
Well, I was only alive for one of them, and I don't quite remember it. So, but I just think based on the legacy, it would be Star Wars. I think, I mean, most of the accounts I've seen in terms of, numbers of people showing up and just the excitement, it would have to go to Star Wars. Though Jaws is nothing to sneeze at, right? Like it was its own kind of like horrific thing that was, and so much of it was storytelling, just amazing storytelling where you don't even have the shark and you're just dealing with the fear of that thing. So I don't know. They're both pretty amazing, and the fact that those guys are buddies, that George Lucas and I don't know. It's been a long day.
And
What's his name
Spielberg,
again?
yeah.
Thank you,
Spielberg.
Spielberg.
Yep.
Spielberg, just how much they're real chummy, and they did a lot of movies together, like Indiana Jones and a lot of other things. And Spielberg is his own. He's made a huge contribution to film as well.
Yeah.
So,
and I am super curious how big of a difference The Empire Strikes Back would be if George's first choice got to direct it, which was Steven Spielberg. George Lucas was not able to do it because he didn't want to show the creators at the beginning of the movie, which was against what all the unions were doing. So he dropped out of the unions, so he was not allowed to hire Spielberg for it. But
so they got a professor, right? Wasn't the guy like a theater professor or something? I forget the director.
It's for some reason his name's not coming to mind.
Right, yeah.
But he has never told a big story. He only told small personal stories, and that really shines in that movie. So I think that's a thing. And also I got some word from Nuga. It looks like the power went out in his home. So if it comes back, he can hop back on. Definitely, would love to have him back on. Also, if you're on your phone right now, Nuga, you can always join from your phone. But yeah, if not, it's absolute pleasure, and I will definitely be having you on in the future. But yeah, so J-Kev, your thoughts on George Lucas Star Wars?
My entire life I've had Star Wars, and so whenever I would think of what are the best movies, the most fun epic story, it was always Star Wars. There were a lot of others. I mean, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I've got other different universes that I really enjoy. But for the longest time, Star Wars was the main one. So he's affected so much of pop culture. As Nate was saying, there is almost no area of filmmaking today that hasn't been touched by George Lucas. And I just think that's phenomenal. The things that he did, he showed people that it could be done, even with the first movie, but especially with the Empire, basically a big FU to the whole filmmaking industry. He's like, I'm not going to do it the way you want it done. I'm going to do it the way I want it done. And I'm going to figure out a way. And for a guy who likes to rag on, certain political themes that I think I align with somewhat and then somewhat not, he sure was a great capitalist in terms of being able to make a lot of money from toys. And he invented that whole industry, the whole merch industry, and got to do it his way. And I think good, so much good out of that. I have learned so much as a communicator by watching all that extra stuff that Nate was talking about. I've probably seen, and I'll say this, and then I find new ones all the time, but just about every like behind the scenes documentary, web series, or whatever that he's ever done on the original trilogy and on the prequels, multiple times, most of them. I've listened to his audio commentaries on all 6 of the original films so many times. Little things like the pointer scene is one of my favorite communication devices, where you've got everybody around a map in a modern like war film, but there it would be like the digital 3D Death Star or indoor moon or whatever, and you're literally pointing and saying, we're going to go and take that hill and we're going to do it this way, and then the audience just thinks that's the story, but the trick is oh, we're seeing what they're going to do, so we have some framework, some context for what's going to happen. I think that not happening in, at least, well, it sort of happened in The Last Jedi, and then it totally failed, and that's a whole other topic I would love to do, like a long period of time. Why I think that's amazing. But that I've used that particular device, the pointer scene, in my work as a consultant and as speaking as a keynote speaker. A lot of things that I've done just to be able to orient my audience. Here's the things that we're going to do, but in an entertaining way. And there's probably 100 things I could mention that I think were amazing that he contributed, but he is not to be, dismissed. I just personally took it, kind of like, how could you hate the prequels? Like when I was in that era as an adult, who people were ragging on it and like the originals were better. Like, well, but it's the same guy's vision. First of all, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, a new company took it over, and we'll talk about that. But I had to recontextualize the way I thought the originals should have gone, because this was his story from the beginning. And but I think that's maybe a level of maturity some people haven't gotten to yet, and they think they know better the way the director or the writer should have done it than the person themselves. I'm like, that's cool, man. You go make your own. Go and I'll go see it. I'll buy a ticket and we'll see how well you do. I mean that mostly positively, but in the back of my mind, whatever. But yeah, I think George Lucas has done amazing things for just culture and for me personally in my own life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's actually how I learn as well. Is I actually, if I have to read something, I go through and I read all the subheadings first. Same thing as a pointer scene, because now I have a framework and I can fill in that framework rather than following what I'm learning. And then Nuga, I know you got your powers out, so feel free to just stay, without visual.
Like this.
It's however you want to, but yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you're able to follow it, but the George Lucas era Star Wars, your thoughts on it.
I didn't hear a lot of what Nate and Jake have said, but I mean, what he brought to filmmaking was just unparalleled. I mean, he did make a lot of bad decisions. Darth Icky being one of them, and then ruining the Maul game being one of them. I don't know if you've read that Game Informer article about the Maul game, but I highly recommend reading that.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, that was a sad thing, because that seemed amazing. But I mean, overall though, I love everything he's done, because he basically gave me my childhood. Everything that I remember is because of George Lucas, pretty much movie wise, and the Star Wars fandom and all of that. What happened with the prequels was definitely unfair. He didn't deserve that hate, and it ultimately led him to sell Star Wars, and because of everything that happened. But I mean, we wouldn't be here talking if it wasn't for George Lucas. He's probably the most influential filmmaker that I can think of, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I love about those the interviews that Kevin, you post a lot of them, and you've seen way more of those than I have, and I'm always in your comments like, wait, where do I find this one? And it's always other filmmakers. Like, there's one of the things I love about the sequel trilogy specifically is, you see the love that every person on this project has for Star Wars. Every single person. But when George Lucas made it, there was nothing. No one knew what a stormtrooper was. You had a bunch of actors dressed as stormtroopers, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what a stormtrooper is. There's no history. He's making this up, and it's so cool. And then also I love how like, it's Ellen in the chat talked about how we got to see ET's species in the prequels briefly. And then we also know that about him and Spielberg having a bet about which movie would do better in Close Encounters of a Third Kind versus Star Wars. Steven
Hmm.
Spielberg ended up ahead on that bet. He bet because each one's bet on each other's films being more
Hmm.
popular. So yeah, good on Steve. I'm sure he's made more money than I've ever made off of that single bet, but that's a whole separate topic. Um, and how about you, Nate? Your thoughts on Oh, we started with you,
Yeah.
Bruce Lucas. Yeah, my bad. All right, so then we got the news that Disney was buying Star Wars. Um, A, was that good or bad news for you on that day? This one, we're going to start with Nuga on this one. Was that good or bad news when you found that out? And also, your overall thoughts on Disney Star Wars?
Good news. Very good news for me because I mean we weren't really getting anything. Like as far as I knew, Star Wars was dead. Like because George Lucas didn't want to do it. I didn't know. I mean, I guess he had the script that came out or whatever the outline he had that came out with Maul and all that recently. But I mean, they, in my opinion, Disney saved Star Wars. Um, Without Disney, we wouldn't have anything. And I was excited because of that. Because Disney, say what you will about Disney, but they know how to write a villain, and we got a good villain, a few of them actually, out of the new Star Wars. And like I said before, I mean that's a wave that I can bring my kids in and enjoy Star Wars with them. Like I've got a 10-year-old and two 4-year-olds, and they're getting into it slowly now because of Disney, because of how good the new movies are. Because it's kind of hard to sit through episode 1 and 2 when you're 10 years old, in my opinion, because they're kind of boring for a child. But these new movies, they started off with a bang and they ended with it. And overall, it's just I love the fact that Disney took over this.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny, especially with the Mandalorian. I think I keep saying because a lot of people are like, oh no, it's not Disney Star Wars, it's Jon Favreau that's doing this, and I'm like, but Jon
Yeah.
Favreau, like how did he get involved with the project? I'll tell you how. He's been working
Disney.
on Marvel movies, with
And the
all of them
Jungle Book
except for the first one. Yeah, and the Jungle Book, one,
Lion
and he's
King,
doing
yep.
Jungle Book 2 and Lion King. Jon Favreau is Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Yes.
so
He is.
it's kind of funny, but yeah, I love it. Kevin, your thoughts on the Disney days?
When I first thought of it, when it first came out, the news, literally, I was like, oh, well, Leia's my favorite Disney princess now, right? Like, I kind of took it lightheartedly, and I thought, oh, okay, if they're investing billions of dollars in it, we're going to see more content. So I was excited. I had not invested a lot of my time into the expanded universe, as I've mentioned, and there are now some stories I'd like to get into from there. But at that point, by the time they bought it, I had already had kids, and I'm already like well into my career, and I just wasn't thinking about Star Wars as much. And when we talk about, well, okay. I'll just throw this part in here too. I was pretty much done with the fandom. Like I'm starting to get back into it with The Force Awakens, and I thought, here's all this new stuff. Of course, I love the Clone Wars and all that stuff. But when all this stuff came out about The Last Jedi and the petition to make it not canon and all that garbage, like I was like, I'm done with the fandom. I'm never going to be part of a Star Wars group ever because of this. Now, thankfully, here I am, and I've met some wonderful people, and they're not all like those guys. But my perception was, anybody that spends some time online, just enough to kind of get a taste of that negativity, that was really frustrating to me because I love that somebody took over the company and is making new content. And when I've gone back, because part of my training in my college days was as a historian and an anthropologist and some of these subfields to the things that I studied. And I look at like those interviews that I find just wherever I can find them. And when I saw that this was George's idea to sell it to Disney, and he said that people have been telling him all along it should have been Disney from 1970s forward, that there's so much strength that it's at Disney. I thought a lot of those same things. So I'm a huge fan of Disney Star Wars. They saved Star Wars.
Yeah, and I love how I mean First of all, perfectly put. Um, and then Element brings up, just listen to George. He sold it to Disney so that they could give us much more Star Wars.
Exactly what he says.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it would protect it. He gave it to a company that it would live on beyond him. And that's what I think all creators want. Yeah, maybe a little butthurt that they didn't use his outlines. By the way, that they paid him to make. It's not like those were just floating around for a long time. It was part of his obligation. But then they didn't use them, and I get all that. But who wouldn't be? Like, he's invested his whole life into Star Wars. But I think at the end of the day, if I had George Lucas do anything, it would be come out and support this thing that you've helped to create. Like, say something. Go up to the mountaintop and just one time just say, I like Disney. And then go back to your cave. That would be fine. That's my only gripe about George Lucas.
I don't know. I mean, poor he only got $4 billion. You know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah, it's true.
I know. Bad deal. I'd say.
Yeah, but Disney only does it for the money.
Right.
Anyway.
And George never did it for the money. I mean,
right, exactly.
He didn't just make things for merchandising, right? Purposes.
Yeah, teddy bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of funny going through and looking at old reviews of the old Star Wars movies, because ever since the first one, it's been a repeating thing. I don't know, it's just funny. But Nate, your thoughts on these Disney days?
Yeah, I mean, love it. I love it. Now, at the time, like, I've always been a huge Star Wars fan. It's always been my favorite, but I was not what I am now for Star Wars. So looking back, I mean, I wasn't, I was a little younger, but I would have never envisioned myself being on a Star Wars podcast or even having a Star Wars podcast of my own. And like, here I am, many years later, just like more and more, like every day I just dive more into it and I just like it more and more. And that wouldn't be a thing without Disney, bringing it back. So in terms of people saying like, did they save it? Did they ruin it? For me, I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but for me, completely revived it. It wasn't really like nothing happened before. Like, I don't think the prequels were bad and it like killed Star Wars, because I love the prequels. But in terms of the content we were getting, it was over. So I do think for a brief moment, maybe I was Luke in this moment of Kylo, for crossed my mind for a split second of like, Disney. Like, I know they're a huge company, but I was like, what's it gonna be like kind of thing. But then it passed, and I was like, all right, Star Wars is coming back, and I'm more excited than ever. And now you see, it's easy to look back on it now and be like, wow, look at what they've done. It's more than just the movies. We've gotten the Star Wars story movies. We've gotten, the animated stuff. We've got, I mean, now you're getting live action shows. Bring me Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor. I'm all for it. I just, more Star Wars. So for me, huge thing. It's made me fall in love with Star Wars that much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm probably an outlier here, where when the announcement came, I wasn't happy with it. You know what I mean? I've read I had already started, my journey of reading all these books and all this stuff, and finding out, oh no, they're making new canon, and like, oh goodness. And I gotta say, having seen the end result, I was wrong. So that's me quoting Mark Hamill there, but it's serious. And
I wish more people would have seen that end quote for him instead of just the first one.
Right.
But the second one doesn't count because he was paid to say it or whatever.
Right.
And you're like, okay. We actually have Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you've seen him, he's an awesome Obi-Wan cosplayer on TikTok.
Oh yeah.
Love his stuff, but he says Disney Star Wars is for all. You just need to be mindful of your thoughts. Let go, and you'll find your Star Wars.
That's wise.
And your Star Wars might not be my Star Wars. And that's okay. That's why I love this podcast, because I talk to people. I get bored talking to copies of myself. So
One thing I want to add real quickly
Sure.
that I forgot to say a minute ago. I mean, with Disney bringing it back, like kind of like what Jacob said, it reinvigorated my love for Star Wars because we weren't getting anything. We hadn't had anything for so long. I missed the Clone Wars. I'm working through it now. The first season, not great. I'm getting through it.
First two are a little slower. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's worth it though.
But,
Stay strong.
It is.
I mean, and
when
when Disney bought it, everybody immediately thought, "Oh, Disney's buying it. They make movies about princesses and kids movies," but they forget that they had 10 years, 15 years, or whatever of Marvel movies that were mind-blowingly amazing, and that never, I guess, that never crossed anybody's mind. They just immediately went to Frozen. Oh, they're gonna make Star Wars and into Frozen, but I mean,
it's all about political agendas.
Yeah, it made me get back into the franchise in a big way that I hadn't had in a long time.
Yeah.
I would add to that I had never, like I mentioned, I wasn't in the EU. I'd never read a Star Wars book. I had never read a Star Wars comic. And I got the Marvel Unlimited account. And so I'm going back through all these series. I just read the whole Leia series. I mean, this is Disney Star Wars, but it's canon and it's from the era between, A New Hope and Empire. And I thought, this is amazing. Like, that gave me chills, that story. And
my goodness, the scene where she stands in the entryway where doors open and Maul was. Chills of that scene for sure.
It's so good. So just to see so much content, and again, not criticizing what's now Legends, as long as everyone understands that it was never canon. But it doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. You can still enjoy it. You can still enjoy all the movies that you ever had. That nobody's taking that away from you. But the fact that now the canon is growing so fast in so many mediums, and you don't have to keep up with all of it. But I love exploring it. That's one of the things I loved about Star Trek and even Stargate, where I could explore the universe in multiple shows and multiple different things that all fit together. These comics, these books, I've got a whole bunch of Star Wars books that I've been working through. I love it, man. It's just, it's so good. There's so much being added that's all now canon, all the new stuff.
And I keep thinking of other things. With Disney taking away taking away the previous stuff before they took it over, a lot of people got upset about that. But when you think about it, for a new fan of Star Wars, that much content is just overwhelming to think about trying to get into this series and understand what's going on.
Really?
And
I mean, there was only 350 books.
That's true. I mean, I remember when I was like 12 or something, I read an X-Wing book and didn't understand any of it. But I mean, they created a better jumping on point. And then, because like in Legends, Boba Fett survived and came back, correct? Like,
yes.
The way I see it, like with the Mandalorian doing this,
pit.
Right? The way that Disney's doing it, it's not necessarily that they got rid of Legends. They just put it on hold until they could bring some things back in, and people don't understand that either. Like because we got Boba Fett back, and that was part of.
And I gotta be totally honest, the way Boba Fett came back in Legends, he. Like the Sarlacc was like telepathically talking to him. Like there's a bunch of weird stuff. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of like great stuff. Sorry, I feel like I'm doing Donald Trump gestures. But there's a lot of weird stuff that happens, but there's a lot of really great stuff too. But it was certainly a mixed bag, and far too much. It competed with itself a lot, and there was far too much for any new fan to get into. So yeah, where I personally come down on it is, yes, I was disappointed at the news. And then the very first canon book I read was Lost Stars. And
so good.
I was like, oh my god. Everyone please read Lost Stars.
So good.
It is shockingly good. And I was like, oh, is this what we're getting? Okay, never mind. I'm on board. Let's go. Let's go. And at this point in time, we are, Liebewan Kenobi in the chat says, he's 51 and he's gone decades without Star Wars. And now we live in a world where content is being given to us weekly. I also have Jay Windu in here who's like, yes, Disney is what kept Star Wars relevant, because I can't think of any other franchise started out as a movie franchise and is still relevant right now. That's unheard of. That's not a thing. And even, even if like, what do we have to look forward to? And also, I'm sorry, I'm just so, because I have a lot of really cool people in the chat. But Elma says, points out, this is our Star Wars future. High Republic books, which are great, right? We definitely have more novels for everything. We have a ton of comics, but all the comics are relevant, and we can learn things from the movies in these comics because now it's all canon. Taika Waititi movie, Ryan Johnson trilogy, potentially. A Leslie Headland female-led show, which we're all now speculating is Dr. Aphra, an Obi-Wan show, uh, a rumored Ahsoka show, a Cassian Andor show, especially in this day and age where shows are, I mean, TV shows have passed movies in the terms of quality and like the amount of information. And yeah, Disney is famous for kid stuff, but anytime you saw that Miramax after Pulp Fiction, that's Disney. Speaking of which, I do have a gripe about Rise of Skywalker. You can drop one F bomb and retain the PG-13 rating. I needed Mace Windu. I need Mace Windu to get up, motherfucker.
More than a mother flirkin.
Yeah, like I would have loved that. That would.
Well, I think that would have caused some controversy, but I think it would have been flipped, like who was angry and who wasn't, for the most part. But because some people got mad that they even used the language that they did. I'm like, Star Wars always had a few swear words in there. It was never, but it was PG-13, but it wasn't for kids. I mean, it was PG, sorry, and it wasn't for kids, but yeah, it was for kids because you got into it when you were a kid. Like almost everybody's in Star Wars, me included, got into it when we were a kid. So anyway.
and I think that Dave Filoni says it best, when he's like, people want like dark, gritty Star Wars. And how old were you when you got into it? Okay, why do you want to deprive these kids of it? But yeah. But real quick to move on, and I apologize for taking up your guys' evenings, but it's just been an awesome conversation. I enjoy it.
Oh, I'm good.
But
that's great, yeah.
I want to go around and talk about, now that we've talked about all of it, right? All of the movies, the eras, the George Lucas days versus the Disney days. How's the fandom doing, and what should we be focused on in the fandom, and why? And I will go to Nate first with it.
All right. Yeah, no, this is a great question. Obviously there's some toxic fandom out there. I think I like to look at Star Wars in a way of take it for what it is. I mean, I feel like when it comes to the toxicity of some of the Star Wars characters, it's because people care so much about it that they grow so attached to some of these characters that they have this vision for what they expect them to be. So when you're speculating about something, and I think that's part of the reason why we see it so much more with the sequels than previously, is because the longer we go in a timeline, the more we're going to expect something of these characters because we know the characters more. So I think that what it comes down to, I think it's something that, all fans could probably do to some aspect when you're speculating about something, to keep an open mind about that possibly not being what's going to happen, and being okay with it, and recognizing that what's written is written for the character, and that is what it is. It's not, that's not my Luke Skywalker type deal. I like to look at it as this has been the story all along. If it was written all at once, this is the story, and we're just looking back at how it played out. But because we're moving along with the creation of this, I feel like that's when some of that speculation can become toxic, because we want something to happen or we have a vision for something, and then when it doesn't happen, it makes people upset. So I like to kind of take it for what it is. And it's okay to predict and make predictions and think, oh, this would be cool if this happened, or this, might be a better thing, or I would have liked this better. That's all great. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion of what they like and what they dislike. Um, but when it comes to what's factual and what actually happened, it's important to realize that that's what's happened. It's up to you on whether you like it or not. But um, to not just disregard this idea of it going against what you may have speculated. Um, but overall, I mean, the fandom, I think, is coming to a better place now since the Last Jedi caused a lot, and that, I think that some of that carried over into Solo. So that hurts me
definitely.
because I love Solo. I'm a big Solo fan.
Yeah.
There's maybe some things here and there that I probably would have done differently. I'm not gonna lie, but I still love the movie. I love the story where they were going with Darth Maul, Crimson Dawn. I mean, I want to see all that. But it hurts when you see the criticism or the backlash that Star Wars gets for some of these things, and now it actually affects them, not potentially going on to continue that. I know there were people were talking rumors about it becoming a trilogy, or continuing that story and do it to a show, and now I don't know what's going to happen. But I think with Mandalorian coming out, I think that's really helped the Star Wars fandom kind of bring back, not as toxic. The reason I say that is because with Star Wars now being a live action TV show, and just the hype that the Mandalorian's gotten, everybody knows Baby Yoda, right? The child. There's people that have been brought to Star Wars because of the Mandalorian.
Absolutely.
So everyone sees these gifs or these gifs, whatever they're called, of Baby Yoda sipping on his bone broth, and it's things like that I think has brought a lot more of just like the average, maybe not the extreme Star Wars fans, but some of just like average, TV Disney Plus watchers to Star Wars, and kind of resurge this idea of, I don't know any of these characters. I don't have any expectations. So it's kind of opened this back to like maybe what A New Hope could have been, like kind of was when we're first introduced to the world of what Star Wars is. So yeah, I think it's coming back around. It seems like it comes in cycles,
Absolutely. And I do hear this like, oh, Disney ruined stuff, and I'm like, okay, then why are you here?
Yeah.
Why if I ruined your dinner, let's say I just picked up a thing of salt, just unscrewed the cap and dumped it all over your dinner, why are you still eating it? Like,
right.
And complaining about it. This is terrible.
Right. Exactly.
It reminds me of that of Family Guy where Peter's eating the pine cone and he's like, it's terrible, it's awful, I hate
keep
it.
eating this.
Right.
Okay, that sounds like a meme I need to post now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll give you credit.
Yeah, please do. How about you? How about you, Noga?
Well, apparently none of us are real Star Wars fans, so
I get that a lot.
yeah, I get that more than anybody should get anything. It doesn't make any sense to me, and a lot of it, which makes even less sense, is that from what I've seen, most of them are kids that are doing this. Like when I was a kid, I had zero criticisms of Star Wars. I mean, I can see it to a point possibly where when us growing up, all the main characters were male, so it's easier for us to relate to them. With Rey being the main one of the main focuses of the sequels, that may be why some of these kids can't relate to it. But the way they're going about their opinions is not something that should be done. Like there's a lot of, I mean, I didn't even know how bad it was until I got on TikTok with the female creators getting attacked for not knowing enough about Star Wars or simping on Kylo or whatever. It doesn't matter why you're a fan of Star Wars. We're all fans of Star Wars, and that should be the end of it.
Mhm.
And I don't understand the hate, but it and like you said, it's not as bad as the prequels were, but
It is louder, but it's not
it's
as bad.
way louder
Right.
because we have the internet and
Right.
or widespread internet compared to what we had back then. But what I don't understand is we have so many years of people hating the prequels and then loving them after we got more content that expanded the universe and made things better for the prequels. We don't have that yet for the sequels. Give it time. Everybody's going to love this in what, 10 years when they've
Less,
expanded it
yeah.
to the point, or yeah, when they expand it to the point of how big the prequels are now. And oh man, I will go on there and defend Rey at any time. Anytime I see anybody saying she's not a Skywalker, it doesn't make any sense, because you can not like it. You're allowed to not like that she's a Skywalker, but just outright saying that she's not a Skywalker or she's a Palpatine is just ignorant. And that needs to stop, because it's not fair for us to grow up with our heroes being male and girls growing up now having that strong female lead and people crapping all over it because they don't like the way that Disney handled it. Like,
and not only that, but having a strong female lead that's still feminine. There's a large thing where they would just make them more masculine as a character to make them stronger, and it's not cool.
I've yet to hear one valid argument of why she's a Mary Sue.
Neither have I. I've heard it based off of the actual definition, and then I've heard people creating their own definitions, and it still doesn't hold up somehow. But I have Hammy Demand in the chat here, and he says they're definitely influenced by Star Wars YouTubers who don't like the sequels.
I was gonna say that.
And
They're hearing other people say bad things and just parroting it because that's all. They don't have they're not sitting down and watching it and thinking about it critically themselves.
Right.
yeah, it's. I mean, that's exactly. I feel like there's like 6 YouTube videos that they've all seen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really, like no more than that. Just like there's 6 that I've found. I get quoted a lot. I've watched all 6. They're all wrong
It's
for very
painful,
obvious
right?
reasons.
Yeah.
But Kev.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'll try to boil it down since we're running in time. By the way, we could go all night and I would still be fine with it as long as my batteries all work out. But this is awesome. But this is what the fandom should be. This kind of talking. So thank you, everybody, and the chat too. There are a few things I think that are important for Star Wars fans to learn. And I'm not at any point saying true fans versus fake fans or whatever, because I don't get into all that. To me, you're only a suspect fan. I won't even say a fake fan if you're going around calling everybody fake fans and, whatever. So there's that, which is just ignorant by itself. But the other part of that is if you care at all about the hero's journey, about somebody, going through trials and learning and becoming better on the other side of that, then you need to start listening to all the wisdom in all these movies, because like anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I quote that so many times when people talk about, I hate this, I hate that. Well, hate leads to suffering. And that's not just something that Yoda said that's a meme. It's a big deal. The greatest teacher failure is do or do not, there is no try. And there's so many different things that we learn through nuggets of wisdom. You're going to find that a lot of things depend greatly on our own point of view, right? Like that whole thing, even though that was another retcon moment in the original trilogy, it's a beautiful one. And it's just the way he said it, like that growing up, that actually helped me a lot, just be a more mature person as I was growing through and doing my own hero's journey, trying to figure out who I was in life. And I think a lot of these kids don't have, I'm going to be talking as a parent now and as a community leader, they don't have enough of their own parents involved in their lives. I guess these kids not taking, like the school system is in charge and whatever else that they do. So these kids are just unfettered on the internet reading. Well, they're not reading a lot. They're watching YouTubers and TikTokers. And then they think, and they try to tell all of us that, oh, well, most Star Wars fans hate the sequels. Well, that's not true. Or I'll say, use a question to kind of lead them on, and try to get the conversation in a positive direction. Where's your data? Because I'm a data scientist. That's part of what I do. I have lots of data that shows otherwise. I started to bring out the whiteboard and do like, see here, we have these figures, and they don't believe that the prequels were more hated, but we've lived through it. So we know this is a fact. And but beyond our own subjective experience, there's objective data to back that up. And every single measure, whether you're looking at critic scores or audience scores, every professional industry measure shows that the sequels rate higher than the prequels today, even though the prequels are more loved than they were back then. And it's not that I'm trying to make them compete. I'm just trying to give context to say, maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. And maybe instead of going around spewing hate on the net, and particularly toward women and people of color, cosplayers who maybe don't look like the character the way you think they should, like none of that should be going on. Like that's just so immature. And every single Jedi that we ever meet, every hero would be very disappointed in people acting that way. I just want them to understand that and think about it for 5 seconds. Like, maybe I'm not following the Jedi code that I quote so often to prove that I'm a true fan.
I was
going to
say that.
Right? There's so many things, and I just
it's just real quick. That's one of the reasons I love The Last Jedi specifically, because that movie pokes fun at people doing that prior to them doing that, which is so funny because, I mean, those people are Kylo Ren, where they feel entitled to this because I am this, and they're throwing these fits and all these stuff.
Right.
But who ends up being, it's awesome. But sorry, go ahead, continue.
There's a lot in there too, and this ties totally into what I'm saying in The Last Jedi, where Luke specifically, but other characters as well, primarily Luke, is trolling all of these people, like you're saying. Like they're trolling them before it even comes out. Like Rian Johnson, as a Star Wars fan, is knowing that some of this is going to get some backlash, right? Probably not to the level that it actually happened. He probably didn't think that way, but he put in there like all the references to legends. Okay. So Luke mentions legend, I think 3 times, at least twice. And then Rey says, well, maybe the galaxy needs a legend. And in a sense, they come back to it saying, okay, that legend of Luke Skywalker is a big deal. But the way he's like, oh, Luke, a legend, and all these things. I just,
laser
in the
sword.
theater, I laughed so hard about that because I'm like, oh, that's going to get some fanboys mad. But they don't even realize that they're playing right into, the story there. And, Luke's 25-second take on the prequels is spot on. Yeah, it's not complete, but he's not wrong in his interpretation of what really happened. But that makes people angry because they love that era, which is why they analyze Anakin, who's a terrible role model. Okay, I've said a lot of stuff there, but I think the fandom has cycled. I've seen it since the teddy bear hate of Return of the Jedi. I mean, even some with Empire, but I was way too young to understand it back then. But a lot of people are like, oh, the teddy bears are stupid on Endor. Like Ewoks, I get it. But I was 7 when that movie came out, or 6 or 7, and I loved them because, I'm a kid and I didn't have the internet to tell me I should hate it. Kids need to just take a step back from the screen once in a while, or find, like, I'm so encouraged to hear, like, Nate, that you've got a podcast, and there's so many other people that I'm seeing are starting. I'm trying to get more into content creation, and we need more positive creators to try to drown out the voices of the negative Nancys who make a living on YouTube by selling this garbage. I mean, there's some fake news folks, one in particular, I won't name them because I don't want to give them, any props here, who make good money by lying to people day in and day out, and people just quote them. You only have to watch 3 videos to find out they contradict each other, even the videos themselves. But then
Kennedy's been fired like 6 times.
Right, she's been fired so many times, but not really. And then there's the guy, again, I won't mention the name.
Nobody knows what she actually does.
Right, that's right. They don't understand business, but they're trying to tell me how it works, but whatever. So then they've got this other one that's pretty prominent that just rips apart the sequels. But if I were to take his methodology, and I've explained this to people, I could rip apart all the Star Wars movies. Is that what you want? And no, you couldn't do that. I'm like, okay, let's just look at scene by scene. I could just destroy it, but I won't because I love it.
Yeah.
Here's, to me, the key to all of Star Wars, and they're going to hate me for saying it. Rose Tycho said it. We're not going to win by killing what we hate, but by saving what we love. That line that they hate is the key here. Like, as Star Wars fans, we should embrace what we love. Even if you don't love the new movies, fine, go embrace the first 6 or 3 or whatever you like.
Right.
Go love that and try to not be a crappy person in your life. Like, try to be a good human being and help other people. I love it. I spend a lot of time on Star Wars because I love it, and I'm starting to see a community. It helps me. Why are they spending all their time griping about it? Like you said, Brandon, like, what motivates you to spend your energy? Rey's not a Skywalker. She's a Palpatine. This is terrible. Just go like something else then. Try to find something in your life, some joy, because you desperately need it. All right, I've said enough.
Yeah. And people, like, I guess they don't realize, like, for EJ Kev, the first trilogy was made for you, like your age group.
Mm-hmm.
The sequel or the prequels were made for, I don't know how old you are, Nate, but I know, Brandon, you're close to my age, I believe. I'm 35. And the prequels
33.
were made, they were made for us. They were our movie. So, and I guess at that time, the older fans were expecting more to some extent. So that's why a lot of the hate happened. And now the sequels are out. Yeah. And now the sequels are out, and they're for my kids' generation. Like, they're not for us, but I still love them as much, or if not more, than the other movies because of what they're bringing to or what they're giving to us. But they need to understand that they're not for you. They're for the kids of this generation.
I mean, personally, I was not a fan of Rey Skywalker until I spoke to a friend that was pretty much disowned by their family and had to find that with their friends and have healed and look at their friends as their family. And you realize, wow, this means everything to these people or these adopted people, or this means everything to them. Why am I going to try and take that away from this person? I think the measure of a good person is how do you treat people that can't benefit you in any way? Obviously, you don't say anything racist or sexist to people at work because you could get in trouble with HR, or at school because you could get in trouble, or a girl you're interested in because you're trying to get something. But if you are all of a sudden feel comfortable saying this to strangers on the internet, right? Some person that identifies with Rey and decides to dress up as Rey, and you feel the need to do this, honestly, you're not a good person at that point. And it's not the end. It's not me trying to insult them, but you can definitely grow from that location. But it's still,
at
some
least in
will
that moment,
and some won't. But the reason that some will, they're the ones that I'm doing some of my videos for when I go after the toxic people. But it's usually not even for the person I'm responding to. It's for everybody else who's on the fence. Because a lot of these, I've had so many people come to me and say, I hated the sequels until I started watching your videos, or until you explain things. I was toxic and now I'm not. And I can't take full credit for that because there's way more people than me that are influencing them, like this group here. And I really appreciate all of you for doing it. That's so important for them to grow as people, because maybe they don't have those adults in their life that are influencing them in a positive way.
Right.
We're that for some of these kids, and some of them are worth, that are all worth saving if they would just save themselves, right? Like, but some of them will, and they'll be grateful for it, and we're going to make the world a better place. If you treat Star Wars the way that these negative people do, you do that in all of your life. You do that. You'll do that with religion. You'll do that with politics. You'll do that with your job. You'll treat people the same way. If you don't just compartmentalize that stuff. We think that we do, but we don't. If you can be compassionate to people, and like you're saying, Brandon, have people do, let them have their heroes and try to be empathetic toward them, that will make your whole life better. That not just their life, it'll make your life better as a human being. You're going to enjoy life. You'll have a better time if you just try to listen to the lessons of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Right. I think.
And then Nate, your thoughts on it? Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say real quick, just touching on what you're saying there, J.Kev and Brandon too. Like, I think like maybe that's why I gravitate a lot towards the themes of Star Wars and what it kind of provides for the overall, like, the messages that you can get. Not just when you pull those, you pull the context outside of the galaxy far far away, you get a lot of these themes that you can relate to in the real world, which is why Lucas, when he was giving over the rights to uh to Disney, he reminded them, just make sure it's about hope, like continue this legacy of what Star Wars is about, and providing hope for kids. And now you see it through various messages, and one of the ones that continues is that sense of family. It doesn't have to be from blood relatives. It doesn't have to be from certain, maybe something that is, as the world would say, it should come from. You can find that in other areas, and especially those people like you take Leia and Luke, that are the ones that are looking after you. It makes these characters so much relatable, and I think that's a theme that you can really gravitate towards, especially for situation like you were just, the story you were just telling us, Brandon, about that, and finding your family in those areas, and not thinking everything's always about yourself. It's important to recognize the importance of those scenarios for people that need to hear that. And I can take a step back and find enjoyment in recognizing that can relate to someone else very well, even if it's something that may not relate to myself. And that's not just for that, but like other scenarios too throughout Star Wars. Being able to recognize the importance of this can help, someone else, or this is a theme here that can be taken out and help another kid, or, grow up with hope and find these, whether it's the Jedi Council or Rey Skywalker, find a sense of belonging and purpose in what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like the Empire, and I know people like to believe that it's space Nazis or whatever, but it's America. The Death Star, there's two of them, and that's dropping atomic bombs on Japan. And the rebels are based off of the Viet Cong. Like, I honestly feel that fiction, and superhero films and things like that are the most important films of all of us, because it informs right and wrong for the generation that's going to grow up.
Mm.
And I, it's, I don't know. I mean,
Oh, back.
I don't think that can be understated. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's so important. And the big kicker is that the world that kids in 1977 grew up in is a far different world than the kids in 1997, 1999, whatever. It's a different world completely that those
Mhm.
kids grew up in, which is a very different world from the kids in 2015. And all these things inform your worldview, help you find who to relate to and how to relate to them. And I don't know. I mean, I can't lean on the importance of this enough. Like it would, but it is admirable at a certain level of how vehemently certain people feel, because that's their
Mhm.
connection to this, and that is a testament to how powerful this community is. Um, but just understanding that other people exist too. That's okay. Yeah.
Right.
I think
um,
another important message that for those of us or those out there that don't understand, think that there's just all negative people that are just terrible, toxic. It's the
Mm.
toxic fandom. Nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. That's a minority. There are more of
Right.
us, and that message
Right.
from the Rise of Skywalker, and Zori said it, and then Poe said it, Lando said it. There are more of us, and that's the hope that we need. Sometimes we feel like Poe in that cockpit, like, I'm sorry, friends, this is it. That's how I felt with the petition to get The Last Jedi decanonized. I was like, that's it. And then I started finding people on TikTok in 2020 during the pandemic, and now I know there are more of us. So I have hope.
Right. Yeah, good people will fight if we lead them, right?
Yeah.
There
And
you go.
the crazy thing, I started making TikToks in May. Just like the day before, like May 3rd, so I knew what to do on May the 4th. But I think that's like my first TikTok, and since then I can't tell you how amazing. First of all, the positive aspect of the Star Wars community is far greater than any fandom ever. Full stop. No question about it. They're incredible people. I would not be doing this were that not the case. Also, the amount of people that have told me of like, I was afraid to get into Star Wars fandom because of what I heard until I started watching your videos. Or I've been a fan for a long time, but I never told anyone. Because of that. There are, especially our female creators, some of them are they are the most like I've talked to them. They bring so much like knowledge and expertise and all this. I once I said this at the beginning, but I hesitate to use the word true fan. But if the fandom as a whole criticizes you as a person and you are still in it, that is the definition of a true fan. Like, it's not, if it's not easy or expected for you to be a fan and you're still here, that is, those are the people I want. So yeah, that's what I love. But all right, sorry. I know we're running a little long, but I do want to do one last thing with everyone here. I want to go around and have you guys pitch your dream Star Wars. You have the rubber stamp. You can green light your Star Wars project. What project are you going to make? And also give us your closing thoughts and how we can find you. I'll start with Nate here.
All right. I mean, just going off of, maybe prior knowledge, I don't know what the High Republic's going to bring. So I'm extremely excited for that and to find out, some of that information, that lore there. I was a big Knights of the Old Republic fan. Loved it. Love those games. So I know from what we're hearing that's different. That's going to be different, further back than what this High Republic is going to be potentially. But I like that. There's really two. I really like the story of that. So honestly, if there was just some sort of spinoff or something around the high or the Old Republic, I'd be all for it, because I grew up playing those games. They're great. But then I also am a big fan of the Fallen Order with Cal Kestis, and specifically I kind of want, I think the second sister in particular, her storyline is great. And if that were to be, if we found more information about her journey, her, turn to become an Inquisitor. I know we got a little bit of it, but if we got more about, the Inquisitors and maybe even potentially from their perspective about things and what they were feeling, because we've seen some of the big characters and their turns to the dark side, but what was it like having Vader recruit you to come be, join the dark side? And what were their thoughts of the Jedi, and why did the Jedi Council betray them? Or did they just do it because it was, I join or I'm killed type of deal? There's a lot of stuff there that I think could be very interesting to dive into.
Absolutely. And also, I'm not gonna lie, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but as soon as she took off the helmet, I was like, Oh, hello. I'm just saying.
That's great.
How about you, Nuga?
I've got like three things here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
my-
I'm so sorry. Real quick, Nate, where can we find you?
Oh yeah. TikTok is probably mainly where people will recognize me from. Just Nathan _ Master. You can find me on TikTok, and then I hopefully we can get some of you guys on my Star Wars podcast sometime called Star Wars Guys. So it's on every platform. So yeah, hopefully no one thinks we're toxic over there. We like to keep it lighthearted and have fun like this. So yeah, those are probably my two main places you can find me there.
what
Awesome.
was the
I
name of the
love it.
podcast again? I'm sorry.
Star Wars Guys.
And also, if anyone doesn't know, both Nate and his brother, who are both on their podcast, both are great at doing voices. My favorite one is I asked him to do the Revenge of the Sith scene as, I think I asked you to do it as
What was it? I
Jeff
remember, but
Jeff Goldblum.
Sure. Jeff Goldblum. No, you turned her against me.
Yeah, but they both do awesome voices. Definitely check them out. I'm a big fan.
Thanks. Thank you.
But yeah, Darth Nuga, you you have the stamp, the green light button, and also where can we find you?
Well, I mean, you can find me on TikTok at Darth.Nuga. That's pretty much the only thing I'm on currently. But dream project wise, The Force Awakens, the first level as Darth Vader. I want a full game of that where he's hunting down Jedi. That.
Oh yeah, Force Unleashed. Yeah.
Force Unleashed. Yeah, I said Force Awakens. I'm sorry. Yeah, Force Unleashed. The first level on Kashyyyk with him just messing up stormtroopers and Wookiees and all that. I want that more than anything. Other than that, I would like a show or a book at least of Lando and Janna, the female stormtrooper.
Yeah, Janna.
Janna.
Yeah.
Because that line in the movie, if you want to find out, that has to go somewhere. That needs to go somewhere. Like as soon as I heard it, I was like, that's going to be a show. And I want that. Either that or I want a show with Donald Glover as Lando being Lando.
First of all, Donald Glover is just he's just me, to be quite honest. I just have to say, like, growing up as like a black nerd who's into like all types of music and played rock music and all this stuff, he's my voice, and like the Campfire album is like goated in my opinion because it's the song of my life. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm all for that and any and everything he does. And Kevin.
So many projects I would like to see, but I will focus on one, which would be Luke between what we see in the Return of the Jedi, after after Anakin dies and the balance is restored for a period of time. I would like to see his journey and him and Laura Santeca and others just going and exploring the temples. I know we have that in some of the books or at least comics and some of the things coming out. I would like to see an animated show of that. I think that's the most practical way to do something like that rather than try to de-age the actors or recast them or whatever. Although you talk about the technology that Star Wars has helped create, this thing that the Mandalorian has created is amazing, and we're going to see Marvel shows with it, and we're going to see, there's so many things they could do with that maybe they couldn't have done before. So maybe it's live action. I don't know, or some stories that Luke interacts with, and we see Vader cut to Mustafar and his, castle and things like that. Like there's just so many moments in there I would like to see more of, but particularly Luke's journey and as he's growing into the Jedi Master that we all wanted to see.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm on Twitter. I'm not as active on Twitter since I got on TikTok. TikTok's kind of been the place where I've done everything. Although I'm shadow banned again at the moment. I don't know what's happening to my account, but just J. Kevin Parker everywhere that you want to find me. YouTube, channel is called Epic Worldview. I'm going to start putting a lot more content on there. I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do, but I've got probably 4 or 5 videos now, but that's what I'm going to start doing.
That was
Yeah.
Epic. Sorry, Epic Worldview.
Epic Worldview. It's I need to go back and rename it and claim that URL and everything now that I've got a few
Gotcha.
followers. But yeah, you can find me. You can also search just my name, J. Kevin Parker, and you probably get it. It's linked in my TikTok.
Cool.
There you
Gotcha.
go.
Yep.
Link tree and all that.
And well, side topic. My goal also. My force, the other half of my force dyad, Element 7, here in the chat, fully agrees that the ultimate goal is to have all of us, non-toxic and positive Star Wars TikTokers, make a lot more YouTube content and fill this volume. I feel like Star Wars TikTok has gotten better. I don't know if it's hubris, but I like to think that I played at least a small role in that. Um,
A
and
big role. But yeah.
I want to do
Yeah.
the same thing on YouTube because I think that's what we need. So it's not a Star Wars project, but if I could greenlight that, then I would for sure. But for me, pitching a project, I've already shared like my dream show, which would be an animated show that is that's Ray. We almost got part of it with this holiday special, by the way, but it is us. It's Ray starting a new Jedi Order, taking these old Jedi texts and looking through it and finding a passage that teaches something. And Luke's notes are scribed in the corners and stuff. And by looking at it, we get drawn back, and it's a flashback to Luke picking up this book, going out to that force sensitive group and learning this lesson. It's Luke in his prime, experiencing all these things. Sorry, JK, if I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was saying I like that better than my idea because it incorporates what I wanted, but I love that it would be coming from her perspective and flashbacks. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. But that ensures that we can get an anthology of Luke at his best always. But by learning these lessons through Luke, we get the seeds of a more perfect Jedi Order going forward. I think that would just be incredible. Second, I made a TikTok about it earlier today, but I need a Star Wars game that is open world.
Yes.
I'm thinking somewhere in between Grand Theft Auto and Skyrim, which I'm playing for the very first time. I've never played it before.
Yeah.
But open world, right? And your character is Kyle Katarn, which if you've played any of the old games, you know, I mean, you know where I'm going. And the premise,
too, right?
huh?
He was in Jedi Outcast too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the Jedi Outcast games. Yeah. So, you are, and my quick synopsis of the story is like you were a part of like an 8-man super elite Imperial team. Like if this planet is not cooperating, you drop these 8 guys in, give it a month, and you own that planet, right? And so I wanted that half of them defected, half of them stayed in the Empire after Operation Cinder, and you are one of the ones that defected. But it's an open world story where you are this defective Imperial, and you are just trying to survive, just trying to live your life. But there's like Star Wars Galaxies elements of it where you get to choose. You can join this bounty hunters guild and rise yourself up in that ranks. You can choose a smugglers guild, do that. You can choose however the path you want to go. And you still have to topple like the 3 other guys from your unit that defected, but the 4 that stayed have this plan. And you know how good these guys are. And you know, like if I let these 4 guys alone for enough time, they could probably destroy what we have here. And you're trying to figure out what they have planned and how can I stop it. And you get to choose how you do it. Not to mention, since you're Kyle Katarn, you are force sensitive, but you don't know it at first. And as you go through, you may find Jedi temples, you may find books and things like that, and kind of discover and increase and learn. You may find a master. That's what I want. That's what I want more than anything. And yeah, I would tear off my own arm to get it, but then I wouldn't be able to play it.
I don't know if if you guys you know enjoyed board games or anything, but Star Wars Outer Rim I recently got, and that kind of I mean, it's completely different than the story you're portraying, but the idea when you mentioned you know, pick smuggling or bounty hunting or mercenary actions, it's all like open like that in the game, so it's a good one if you guys haven't heard of it or checked it out before.
I will definitely check it out. I've never heard of it. I did play Imperial Assault a bit. That's a great game. You should look it up. But
yeah,
I don't want to go on way longer than anticipated, so I will go ahead and end it there. But I want to thank everyone for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I had a blast. Honestly, it's hard to keep the time under because we usually have such a good conversation, and I look forward to having all of you guys on again. And also, if you guys have your own podcast, feel free to invite me.
yeah,
Nathan,
for sure, definitely,
but,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, but may the force be with you always.